Hey, so so I'm doing two videos in one day. So if it looks like I'm like wearing the same clothes, it's not because I'm like wearing the same clothes again. It's because I'm filming two in one day. I just had to do that disclaimer. Okay, so anyway, so staying with this theme of a captivity comparison, comparing captivities, and how my reading on the first Egyptian captivity really sparked for me understanding and really just flat out believing that it's pretty much very similar or the same to blacks, in the transatlantic or in America. Just reading those scriptures and then being like, oh my gosh, that sounds, kind of like us. So staying in the whole theme of Black History Month, sharing Israelite scriptures during Black History Month. So I do want to start off by giving a disclaimer. So this is actually a very sensitive topic. So I want to just warn people. It's about sexual assault. So if that's, triggering for you, I want to warn you, you may not want to watch this video because it deals with like sexual assault. So if that's the triggering topic, scroll now, turn it off. Don't do it. Don't watch this now. So give you time to do that. Okay. So, trigger warning. Okay. So I'm going to, don't want to fall. I'm going to read this scripture and I'm going to talk about, when I first read this scripture, I actually kind of got mad because I felt like we've been purposely deceived. So I'm going to read the script. I'm going to give some context and then read the scripture. So this scripture is again in Jasher. We're still in Jasher. And this scripture is dealing with Moses. And so this is surrounding Moses and when he killed the Egyptian. So I know we're all familiar. Moses killed the Egyptian and then he had to flee, right? So this is like a greater account of that. So I'm going to read it and then talk about it. So okay. So this is Jasher chapter 71. And so, okay, so I'm just going to read it. And when Moses was 18 years old, he desired to see his father and mother, and he went to them, to Goshen. And when Moses had come near Goshen, he came to the place where the sons of Israel were engaged in work, and he observed their burdens. And he saw an Egyptian striking one of his Hebrew brothers. And when the man was beaten, when the man who was beaten saw Moses, he ran to him for help. For the man Moses was greatly respected in the house of Pharaoh, and he said to him, "My Lord, attend to me. This Egyptian came to my house in the night, bound me, came to my wife in my presence, and now he seeks to take my life away." And when Moses heard this wicked thing, his anger was kindled against the Egyptian, and he turned this way and the other, and he saw that there was no man there, and he struck the Egyptian, and he hid him in the sand, and he delivered the Hebrew from the hand of him that struck him. Okay, pause. So when I first read that, the first time I read that, I was like, what? And the only reason that I say that is because to me, this idea of, okay, let me just start here. So I've seen the 10 Commandments like 50 million times. So like, we're going to talk about like the 10 Commandments, the Prince of Egypt, the church, whatever, or just like, biblical conversations. So when I first read this, now this is just me. If you watch this and you knew this before, you've heard this your whole life, please like DM me, let me know. Cause I didn't know this until I read this scripture. I didn't know that one of the reasons that Moses killed the Egyptian was because of what this wicked thing that the Egyptian did. Listen, the Egyptian in the night went to the Israelite, bound him. And I'm sorry, guys, I know this is like a tough subject, but he raped his wife in front of him. He raped his wife in front of him and then beat him. It was going to try to kill him. And when I read that, I thought, like our captivity, you know, like I immediately thought of that. I immediately thought of, oh my gosh, this is like our captivity. We all know this. When the slave master came into the night and came in, or whatever time, actually they did it whatever time, you know, they would rape the women, and they would sometimes do that in front of the men. You know, all this idea of sexual assault. So when I read this, I thought, okay, I'm gonna be honest, I was mad. I was mad because I was like, why am I super grown and I never knew that one of the core reasons why Moses murdered this man was because this Egyptian to the other Israelite went into that man's home, raped his wife in front of him, and then beat him. Why am I grown and I didn't know that? You see what I'm saying? So going back to my point of this idea of like the 10 Commandments and like the Prince of Egypt. And I know like, okay, that's a terrible example because the Prince of Egypt is a movie for like babies. I get it. But I guess what I'm trying to share is when I first read this, I was mad because I was like, why didn't I know that? Like, why did nobody talk about this? So in the 10 Commandments, which is not a baby movie, you know, it's not the Prince of Egypt, the 10 Commandments, I've seen it 50 million times. Just if you've never seen the 10 Commandments, let me just set the stage. The story about Moses and when he murders the Egyptians, it's in the movie. It's Joshua. It's Joshua. He's like bound, you know, and then you have, I think his name is Baca. I don't remember. Like he's coming and he's like gonna like beat Joseph. So he rounds up the whip, and Moses in the movie, he catches the whip, rounds it up, and then he murders the Egyptian. It's like this whole thing. And, you know, and then Joshua is like, oh, you're the deliverer, all this stuff. So I'm saying that to say these things are lies. That's what I'm trying to say. For me, when I read this scripture, it just really resonated with the fact that in the Egyptian captivity, there was the same theme of the master coming in and doing sexual assault to the women. And in this case, in front of the men, this brutality, it was the same. And so when I first read this, I was like, why have I never heard of this? You know, why was this never talked about? And that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. If you knew about this, reach out. Like, I'm serious, reach out to me. Because for me, my understanding was always, it was always explained as Moses killed the Egyptian because they were oppressed. Moses killed the Egyptian because he saw them struck the Hebrew, which is true. That did happen here. Or Moses killed the Egyptian because, I don't know. It was always vague, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It was always vague. I never, prior to reading this scripture, for me, I never once heard no story about Moses murdered that man because the Egyptian went into the Israelites' home, bound him, raped his wife, and then beat him. I never in my life heard that account of the story. And I want to share that with you because I think that was done on purpose. Because once again, the comparisons of captivities. So under the Egyptian, you had the oppressors doing these awful, vicious things, these sexual assaults. And then in the transatlantic, you had the same thing. So I do want to talk briefly about, again, just this concept of when you're talking about biblical scriptures, when people say stuff like, why? Well, Megan, in the course of like salvation or in the course of all these things, why does that detail matter? Like, why does it matter that the reason why Moses murdered the Egyptian? Well, for me, I'll just share for me, I'm kind of at the point where it's like, we have to stop talking about like what matters. I know I'm going off on a tangent, but like we should stop talking about what matters and talk about what's true. Because it's like, let me decide what matters, you know what I mean, in accordance to Yahuwah. Just tell me the truth. I'm saying that to say this for me is totally different, knowing that backstory about the rape, knowing what I know about American slavery and knowing what I know about like the Egyptian slavery, knowing this piece about the rape personalizes it. It for me, it did. It personalized the scripture. It really solidified that, like, man, these two are the same. Like, they was doing the same thing, you know, the exact same thing. And again, like, I know some people are going to be like, well, Megan, you know, that's what happens in captivity to like a lot of nations. But we still have to talk about how a lot of nuanced things happen. There's just a lot of similarities. And I do want to say this. If you are like me and you were super grown when you read about this or found out about this, I think we should all ask ourselves, if it doesn't matter, because I asked myself this, like, if it doesn't matter, then why is the story of Moses killing this Egyptian who was basically a rapist, why is that not more common known? Because from me, I promise you it wasn't. Like, I never thought of it as like a common story that people knew. It still isn't. The 10 Commandments, they ain't never said nothing about no Egyptian raping somebody's wife in front of him in captivity while they're slaves. He rapes the wife in front of them. Now, I know that's a hard topic, but we got to tell the truth. And so what I'm saying is, when I read this scripture, it made sense to me why they would keep it out. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Because again, it points to a people. And so if you're reading about folks being slaves, you're reading about oppressors coming into the home at night. That's what he said. He said, he came into my house at night, bound me, and came to my wife in front of me. You know who that sounds like. You understand? When I read that, I felt, I saw my people in that. So what I'm saying is, if none of this is true, and this is what I would like you to consider this for yourselves. Why is this not talked about? Why is this scripture never discussed? Because you got to remember that lies are by omission, right? They're by omission. So we don't talk about the fact that the Egyptians sexually assaulted the man's wife. I mean, I've never heard that. Maybe you guys have. I have not. But prior to reading this. So you lie by omission. Why don't you talk about that? Why isn't this preached? Why wasn't that in the 10 Commandments with Moses and everybody, or Charlton Heston? Why? Because it really calls attention to a captivity. That's why. And we can't like lie and say that stuff these details don't matter. If these details don't matter, then what I always say is, if it doesn't matter, then tell the truth. And when you're dealing with the word of Yahuwah, tell the truth. You should be telling the truth anyway. So I know that I'm going to end this. I know this was like a tangent, but I just wanted to share with you guys, because I was mad. I'm going to be honest. I was mad when I read this, because I was like, I'm super grown. And I'm just now finding out that one of the reasons Moses murdered him was because of this vile act that he did. And I'm just now finding out about this. Yeah, it's because it's very similar to another captivity where people were raped. So the similarities just keep on giving. So and like I said, for you in your own journey, especially if you're Black, in your own journey, just start to consider that. Like, start to consider. Don't focus so much on, I don't understand why that matters as it relates to the scriptures or whatever. Start asking yourself, why don't I know this? Like, why did they take it out? Why do they gloss over it? Why wasn't that with Charlton Heston in the 10 Commandments? Why didn't I know? You know? And if you did know that, why isn't it more mainstream? Because it's not. They don't talk about this reason for the murder. They make it vague. So why is that? And what is the truth? So anyway, that's it. Again, I hate talking about this, but yeah, the comparison of a captivity, sexual assault. and this idea of the oppressors going into the homes at night and raping the women and then raping them in front of the men. You know, I hate talking about that, but it's the truth. And I do want to be transparent. I did read that, and then I did think about us as a people seeing our experience in these scriptures. So that's that. You know, I hope you have a good day. Jasher 71 if you want to check it out for yourselves. Okay, bye.